Thank you, Your Honor. What did you tell the defendant at that time?
I asked him if I could buy a half.
And what did the defendant say?
He asked me half of Coke or what?
And then what did he say?
I said half of Coke.
Then what happened?
He went into another room, came back out with a bundle of white powder in it and gave it to me.
And then what did he say, if anything?
He handed it to me.
And after he handed it to you, did you say anything or do anything?
I gave him $60.
And then what did you do with that bundle?
I took it back with me to the police station, initialed it, and gave it to Detective Templeman.
I would like to mark for identification People's One, which is an Alhambra Department evidence envelope. I will show it to counsel at this time.
It may be so marked.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
I am showing you People's One, and I am asking you if you recognize this envelope.
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
My initials are on the back.
BC?
Uh-huh.
And I'm going to ask you to open that envelope. May the record reflect that it is sealed and taped closed. I'm going to ask you to open it and describe what you are doing while you are doing it.
I'm opening the top of the Crime Lab seal where the Crime Lab sticker is.
I'm going to ask you to remove the contents of the envelope and describe what you're doing.
There is a baggie inside. I'm taking it out.
Is that the only thing that is inside?
Yes.
Do you recognize that baggie?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
By my initials on the inside.
Now, you are indicating, you are pointing at a smaller item in the baggie. Do you recognize the smaller item?
That was the bundle I received from Martin.
The defendant?
Yes.
And your initials are on that bindle, are they not?
Yes, and the date.
The date?
Yes.
Could we have that marked collectively as People's One, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. On March 29, 1982, did you go to 413 North Gladys, Monterey Park, County of Los Angeles again?
Yes, I did.
Did you contact the defendant again?
Yes, I did.
What was said at that time?
I went to see if I could get another half.
What was said to him?
I asked him if I could pick up a half of Coke.
What did he say?
He said he didn't have any to come back in an hour.
Did you come back in an hour?
Yes, I did.
What did you say at that time?
I came back to pick it up and he said, I don't have any.
Was anything else said?
I asked him how much I would have to buy to get a deal.
What did he say?
He said he could get me an eighth for $300 or anything else I wanted.
What did you say?
I told him I would get back to him. He gave me his phone number and I left.
What does an eighth mean?
An eighth of Coke is a gram.
You mean an eighth of an ounce or something else?
Pardon?
May we have the last question read back, Your Honor?
Yes.
I mean, it's a gram.
When you say you're buying a half, what does that mean to you?
A gram of Coke.
Okay, fine. And when you say you're buying an eighth,
That's an ounce.
so then what happened after that? On that particular occasion, on March 29, 1982, was anything else said or done?
He gave me his phone number so I could call him back and that I would be back the next day.
And then on March 30, did you go back to 415 North Gladys, County of Los Angeles?
413.
Excuse me, 413, thank you.
Yes, I did.
What happened on that particular occasion?
I picked up a half
From whom?
from Martin
What exactly happened? How did that come about?
because the day before I went there to pick up a half of Coke.
Well, on March 30, 1982, did the defendant answer the door?
Yes.
What was the very next thing that happened after the defendant answered the door?
I told him I was picking up a half a gram.
And what did the defendant say or do, if anything?
He went into the same room. There's a small room off of the living room. He came back with a bundle of white powder and he handed it to me. And I gave him $60.
And then what happened? Did you leave or not?
Yes, I did.
What did you do with that bundle?
I gave it to Detective Templeman.
Did you do anything with that bundle before you gave it to him?
Initialed it.
I would like to mark for identification People's 2, Your Honor, which is another Alhambra Police Department evidence envelope. I will show it to counsel at this time.
It may be so marked.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm showing you People's 2, and I am asking you if you recognize this envelope.
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
My initials are on the front.
Now I'm going to ask you to open this envelope and describe what you are doing while you are doing it.
Yes, I'm tearing the top of the envelope.
Is the top open or closed?
Sealed by the crime lab.
I'm going to ask you to remove the contents if there are any.
I'm removing a bag.
A baggie?
Yes, with a small bag inside of it.
Now, that small item inside of the bag, do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
My initials and the date on it.
Is this the baggie handed to you by the defendant on March 30?
No, the paper inside of it is,
The bindle inside?
yes.
May we have this collectively marked as Peoples 2?
Yes.
Now, on April 1, 1982, did you call the defendant on the telephone?
Yes, I did.
And did you use the number which he had previously given you?
Yes, I did.
What was said in that phone conversation?
I called it to see if I could pick up an 8.
And what did the defendant say?
Objection, irrelevant.
Objection overruled.
May I be heard?
Yes.
There's no count alleging anything that transpired on April 1, 1982.
I understand that. The objection is still overruled.
Then what did the defendant say in that conversation of April 1? Do you recall?
I was asking to pick up and how much it would be.
Okay, and did he give you a price?
Yes, he did, 300.
300? Was there a purchase made on that date?
No, there was not.
Then on April 12, did you have another conversation with the defendant?
Yes, I did.
What did you say to him?
I asked him if I could pick up if he had it.
And what did he say?
He said not to call until 10.
I move to strike the question and the response is irrelevant as this is an uncharged act.
Objection overruled.
And what did you say after he said after 10?
I said it was too late, that I would get back to him.
Then on April 13, 1982, did you call the defendant?
Yes, I did.
What was said in that conversation?
I asked him if he had it, if he had the 8.
The 8?
Yes.
And what did the defendant say?
He said, yeah.
So did you go to 413 North Gladys?
Yes, I did.
And what happened when you got there?
He said that I would have to come back.
So then did you come back?
Yes, I did.
What happened when you came back?
We picked up an 8 for 300.
Well, did you see the defendant hand you anything?
No, he handed it to Ray. Ray was with me.
That would be Sergeant Burnt,
Yes.
and you saw that?
Yes.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Martinez?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Childs, on March 18, 1982, were you an agent for any police agency?
I was working with Alhambra.
With the Alhambra Police Department?
Yeah.
Were you paid for your work as an agent?
No.
At that time, did you have any pending cases
No.
in any jurisdiction?
No, I did not.
Have you ever been paid by the Alhambra Police Agency for any of the work that you have done in this capacity?
I have been given money.
You have been paid?
Yeah, I guess you could say paid.
Have you ever been offered any deals in any criminal cases as a result of your work?
No, no.
Was anyone else present at any of these sales that you have testified to?
Ray was present at one sale, one buy.
Anyone else?
No.
How long have you worked for the Alhambra Police Agency?
Couple of months.
Approximately when did you start?
I don't remember.
Well, was it in March?
No, it was before March,
February?
about February.
And was it in connection with anyone else's criminal case that you began to work for the Monterey Park Police Department?
Could you explain that?
Would you explain to me how you began to work with the Alhambra Police Department?
I have a friend there.
In the police department?
Yes.
Was anything arranged with the Alhambra Police Department to arrange a deal for anyone else's criminal case as a result of your work?
No, no,
Do you have a criminal record?
no.
How did you meet Mr. Gallardo?
From a friend.
What's the name of the friend?
Your Honor, I object if this goes towards the witness, which is not testifying today, which is a confidential informant. I object to any further questions on that.
Objection overruled.
May we have a moment, Your Honor, to ask the witness?
Yes.
I'll strike the objection, Your Honor.
You may answer that question.
Just someone I was introduced to.
Who introduced you?
Jeff did.
Jeff who?
Detective Templeman.
Where did that take place?
In Alhambra.
Where specifically?
Alhambra PD.
I see. And have you ever seen that person again?
No,
Could you describe that person?
no.
Not at all? Male? Female?
It was a male. I only met him once, and it was quite a while ago.
Did you take any notes at all in this investigation?
Personal notes?
Yes.
No,
How about any impersonal notes? Any notes?
no,
Nothing at all?
no.
Did you work with any member of the Alhambra Police Department in this investigation?
Explain what you mean.
In this investigation, in which you have made a number of buys of drugs in March and April, to which you have just testified to, have you worked with any members of the Alhambra Police Department?
On all occasions I was working with them,
Who?
Detective Templeman, Ray, and Detective Fowl.
That's Ray Templeman,
Jeff Templeman,
Jeff Templeman,
and Ray.
Ray who?
The guy there, I can't remember his last name.
Who is that?
There.
Sitting next to you, the detective there.
And who else?
Detective Fowl.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused?
Yes.
No objection.
Miss Childs, you may step down. You are excused and free to leave at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Call Sergeant Burnt.
All right. We are starting off with cross-examination by defense attorney. Defense attorney is Mr. Tarver, Tarver. Plaintiff's attorney is Mr. Kane, Kane. Okay, 12 minutes. Mr. Harris, following the closing of the sale, did you at any time give Mr. or Mrs. Renton a notice of rescission of the agreement? No, sir. Now, further, I ask you, isn't it a fact that at no time you gave them any notice of a breach of any condition or warranty? Now, through my attorney is the only, do you know? I don't. You mean, and did I want them to take the house back? Is that it? No. Did you give them any notice directly, and if so, when, about any breach of condition or the term of the sale of the residence to you? I am not sure I understand. Did you tell the Rentons personally? Did you talk to them and say you were dissatisfied because of termites or the condition of the house for any reason? No, Your Honor. In writing or oral? No, he did not. I did not. You never did? No, sir. Now, do you, of your own knowledge, know of any fact that Mr. or Mrs. Renton withheld so far as their personal knowledge of the termite conditions? I can only relate now of your own knowledge. Well, my knowledge was gained through certain things of your own knowledge. Tell him, I don't want to know what your attorney told you, but what you know. And the state of California informed me of something. Pardon? The state of California informed me of something. You are referring to another proceeding. It was an inquiry that I made. And we will object to this as being hearsay. That is not important, I don't think. I agree with counsel. I want to know if you know of your own knowledge of anything that Mr. Renton withheld in the way of information concerning the sale of this house. I know that he had a termite inspection on it prior to my buying it. How do you know that? The state of California gave me the information. No. Do you know of your own knowledge? Did Mr. Renton tell you? No. Mr. Renton didn't tell me. Do you know that Mr. Renton told Mr. Stone to look for termites in the front of the window? I do not know that. Now, let me ask you further. Is it a fact that you did rely on, at the time of the sale, on the report of Mr. Stone and his clearance? Yes, sir. As related to me by my real estate broker, is it a fact that you relied upon this report and the clearance? Yes, sir. As stating the condition of the house insofar as the termites are concerned? Yes, sir, right. And Mr. Harris, I want to touch on one question here first. You stated on February 15th, 1966, that you had a conversation with Mr. Renton. That's correct. And you made a memorandum of the conversation a short time thereafter. That's right. And do you recall saying in this memorandum that, quote, Mr. Renton later obtained another buyer, but without telling me about the first inspection, stated that he had been told by someone that there were dry wood termites under the house, unquote. Is that true? That's true if I wrote it down there, yes. So, he did tell you there were dry wood termites under the house. Excuse me. You are referring to February 15, 19? No, at the time before the inspection. No, this note refers to the meeting in my office on February 15th. That is 1966, right? Well, the language again says Mr. Renton later obtained another buyer, but without telling me about the first inspection, stated that he had been told by someone that there were dry wood termites under the house. Now, Mr. Harris, how long have you been in the termite business? Since April 1933. When were you licensed? April 1933. Are you licensed at the present time? Yes, that is immaterial. He says he is. I know, but it is immaterial. It is going to open up some questions, Your Honor, which I would like to approach the bench on later. Wait until it arises. Are you licensed at the present time? Yes. And have you been licensed continuously from the date of the report rendered in this controversy and in the present time? Excuse me, that is completely immaterial, if the court please. The question is, what were the facts and circumstances at the time of this incident? Counsel knows this very well. Well, I know the discussion of the case that is behind all this. I am not going to touch on anything objectionable. I think you already have. I think I'm entitled to know if he's been licensed continuously from the date of this report. What relevancy would that have? Only as to its weight, you may answer that question. I have a license. I always have had one, that is, since April 1933. Are you licensed continuously from the date of this report? Yes. Has your license ever been revoked or surrendered? Excuse me. Now, Your Honor, I am going to move for a mistrial, cite counsel for misconduct. He has full knowledge of this that I will be prepared to put on the record, Your Honor, and I just have to move for a mistrial at this time. That is misconduct. It will be denied. Ladies and gentlemen, I will say, assuming there is an objection to a question, I will sustain it. The fact before you is, at the time of this incident, sometime in 1964, that Mr. Harris was a licensed operator pest exterminator. You don't mind if I use that word? That's a good word. I can't think of the other word. We use control, structural, pest controller, pest control. So that I will instruct you to disregard any statements that have been made in court by counsel. Again, I say this is something that is difficult for a jury to do, because once you hear things, even though the court tells you to disregard it and strike it from your memory as if you never heard it, all I can do is say that you try to do that. You never heard it. Now, Mr. Harris, going back to the time when you first made your contact with Mr. Renton, some 10 years prior to 1965, you've testified you did a considerable job for him for subterranean termites, dry wood termites, fungus, which amounted to approximately $2,000 more or less. I testified to that, yes. And you testified there were 2 carpenters who were on the job and that they were on the premises for perhaps 2 weeks. I think there was 2 or 3 carpenters for 2 or 3 weeks, yes. And that they, among other things, tore away some of the stucco and replaced some of the wood members of the frame of the house. Treated it, is that true? Is that a fact? We tore away considerable, not some. It was considerable all the way around the house. Drawing your attention to that, what did you do? And then after you tore the stucco away from the side of the house, then we removed the rotted or infested material, wood, 2x4s, whatever the case may be, and you take them away to the dumps and you treat the material or replace it, completely replace it with new material. And do you treat it at all? In addition to the replacement? Yes. And you recall, did you do that in this case? I am sure I must have. Now, you recall in this case whether you found any beetles in the attic? There were none. You recall whether there were any dry wood termites in the house at any location? I don't recall where they were found, but I think it was around the front porch. Make a note, sir. We will take it up this afternoon at 2 o'clock. We will now adjourn and have our luncheon until 2 p.m. And remember the admonitions of the court. Jury is present. Where were we? Mr. Tarver is examining Mr. Harris. All right, continue. Mr. Harris, have you ever been convicted of a felony? Yes. State the time and the court and the felony convicted for. In 1959, I think it was in June, I helped somebody obtain an abortion. Which court was that in? That is immaterial if the court please. I think you are limited to the nature of the offense charged. The circumstances, would you state the circumstances? I think he has. That is it. I think that limits it. That is about it. 1959 in June, thereabouts. And that's been asked and answered, yes, object on that ground. May I say, ladies and gentlemen, that this question is asked, you will be instructed as how you determine the credibility of witnesses. I assume under the 70 or 80 instructions, one of the attorneys has put that in, and that is the credibility of a witness. One of the factors upon which you make your determination is a conviction of felony. That is the only purpose of this. We were talking about the procedure that you followed when you inspected the Renton premises and subsequently the work some 10 years prior to the May 1965 inspection work and clearance. And if you will tell us step by step, as well as you can recall, what you did during your inspection at that time. I think I have described it already. Could you describe it step by step? It has been asked and answered. You object on that ground? I will object on that ground in the interest of time. Have you gone over this before, sir? I beg your pardon? Did you go over this morning? The same question he just asked? Yes, we went through it this morning. He asked me and I made a circumference of the building and I described it. All right, sustained. Now, did you go into the attic? No. Did you go through the interior of the house? Only partially. And what did you look for when you went through the interior of the house? I didn't look for anything in particular. I was talking to Mr. Renton, I believe. Where do the drywood termites do their damage? In the wood. Which portion of the house? On the ground, in the wall, in the attic? In the wood they are in, wherever it is. They may infest the wood throughout or in any location. Any piece of wood they are in, wherever it is, that is the piece of wood they damage. When you examined the premises on that occasion, some 10 years prior to 1965, did you find any dry wood termite damage? I found some, I think, in the front porch. Now, I believe you testified that there was substantial subterranean termite damage around the circumference of the house at various heights. Is that true? Yes. Did you examine the back stairs? When? Anytime. We are talking about 10 years prior? Yes, the first. I presume we must have. And the sills, the mud sills? Yes. And the wood around under the windows? Yes. Did you crawl under the house to examine the area under the house? You mean 10 years before 1965? Yes, yes. Do you recall whether you used a flashlight or not? That is the only way you can see. Do you recall on that occasion in your remedial work, in your repair work, strike that, in your remedial work, whether you sprayed any portion of the under of the house with copper solution? I don't recall exactly what we used. We used copper or we used creosote or some arsenic compound. Do you recall Mr. Renton expressly asking what that was for? No. You don't recall that he did? I don't recall any conversation that he did or did not. I don't know. And did you talk to him periodically during the inspection and repair? You are mixing two things together. Did you talk to him periodically during the inspection? About inspection, yes. During the repair, yes. And during the administration of any solution for remedial effects, yes. So you could have talked about the copper solution. We were using it. I probably talked to him about it. Now, 10 years ago, a $2,000 job would be substantial, wouldn't it? And that is a substantial job, yes. Even more so 10 years prior to 65, that would be 1955. Well, I have no way of comparing. Would the cost of the repair and remedial work have increased between the year 1955 and the year 1965? Oh yes, carpenter wages have gone up considerably. Would you hazard an opinion? I don't recall what they were in 1955, but considerably, considerably. Now, isn't it true that you were engaged in some home building in the year 1964? Yes. Where was that at? San Mateo. And they were a number of homes? Yes, I built $40,000 to $50,000 houses. Now, when Mr. Renton first called you, you were in the process of building these homes, weren't you? I think so. And you explained to him that you wouldn't get to the job until after the first of the year? Probably so. I don't recall, but I would be inclined to think so. Excuse me, do we have an identification first of what year? I think it is clear it's called the end of 1964, and he was involved in home building, and he couldn't get around. That's right, 64. I understand. Now, didn't Mr. Renton further tell you when he first called you that this was the house that you had done substantial work on some 10 years before, and it was located on, did he give you the address? Well, he reminded me and I remembered him. And you said, well, yes, I remember, but there are a lot of houses on Castillo, and perhaps I will recognize it. Was that your answer? I can't remember now. But did he tell you about the work that you had done on 1330 Castillo Way residence some 10 years before? He reminded me of it. Now, you have been a termite inspector, a licensed termite inspector and repairman for a good number of years, since 1933. And what is the exception? Strike that. Do you recall at all now whether your recollection is reflected in recent years or whether you knew at that time how old this house was approximately? I have no idea how old it is. It's a Spanish stucco house, or California stucco. You recall the nature? It's a California mixture of Spanish and English, I think. And on Castillo Way, these homes were built about when? I have no idea. And do you recall from your several visits to the residence whether or not there was rat proofing under the house, or whether it was soil without rat proofing? There is no rat proofing under this house. Would that enable you to place the approximate time of the construction? No. Now, knowing about the inspection of the house by yourself some 10 years prior, let's say in 1955, and knowing the magnitude of the job and the specificity of the work, and having been called back, what was that word? Specificity, the special nature of the work, Your Honor. The colleagues have taught me all these things. I have never used the term. I can't even pronounce it. It sounded a little bit odd. Based on those assumptions, would you have any opinion as to the likelihood of recurrence of these separate types of infestations? There's no way to determine when or how they are going to get into any house. Once they have been there in this magnitude, I mean the subterranean, to the extent they were up the side walls, the drywood termites, as they were in the front porch, and the fungus in the various places that you have indicated, would it be reasonable to expect these things would recur in years to come? Not necessarily at all, if it is completely removed. Could they? They could get into a brand new house the next day. Is it possible, in your experience, with the fact that the ground under the house was not covered with rat proofing, would that make the wood members of the structure more susceptible to receiving termite infestation, only in relationship to the ventilation? Now, would you explain that, please? Well, if you have sufficient ventilation, it doesn't matter how much water there is under the house. If you have no ventilation, you don't have to have any water to get rotten. Is it easier for the subterranean to go through the ground than it is for the concrete? Obviously. Are you aware of this when you make the inspection? Yes. You recall you were called by Mr. Renton, and you said sometime in November of 1964, and you told him it would be around after the first of the year, and you did then come to the premises during 1965. Can you refresh your memory? Can you try to recall exactly as near as you can when you first came to the residence in 1965? Just early in May, I think. And that was the first time you came, early in May? I think so. And your report was rendered when? 15th of May. And so the first time you came was in early May, and the report was rendered the 15th of May. Is it possible that you came to the premises earlier that May and had to come back to make the repairs because they needed the clearance within 30 days of the sale? I might have been there the last week in April, but it is still the first part of May. It is within that range of the week. Now, knowing the previous repair work and the condition of the premises, and prior to the repair work in 1955, when you made your inspection in the early part of May, were you conscious of going over these areas again very carefully? Would you repeat that question? Define the time. All right.